Thank you, Chan, and thank you all of the presenters. I hope you guys are all as blown away and as excited and amazed and humbled as I am by what's possible when a community comes together and focus to do what's right for public health. What you just saw was in 88 hours. We took a bunch of questions that are super important for public health, brought to us by government agencies and public health institutions from academia, industry, and government. And we brought those questions together. We designed appropriate analyses. We developed open source software. We executed that across an international data network. And we delivered results that you've now just seen some preliminary views of. Now, I feel like we all deserve a round of applause to each other for accomplishing something that I think is unprecedented. And certainly it's the proudest moment of my professional career to be able to work with all of you to participate in this effort. But now I'm going to be the bearer of bad news. We're not done yet. Quite the contrary. As Danny showed, this disease is still spreading. There are patients continuing to suffer, and there's still a lot of open questions that are out there. So the last couple of minutes of our webinar, I'd like to talk about the journey ahead. So first, I want to recognize and acknowledge what an amazing activity we've just taken place in the last 4 days. In 88 hours, we brought together 351 researchers from 30 countries, and the amount of dedication that everybody put in, the number of times that I was on a 3 a.m. call thinking I'd be the only crazy one, only to see dozens of others in my same time zone joining me, was truly humbling. The number of times we had a webinar camera on and seeing everybody holding their coffees or holding their beers and working through, making sacrifices to do the work is something I've just never experienced this type of inspiration in all of my life as a scientist. So I want to acknowledge all of the researchers who signed up to participate, all of those who participated for the last 88 hours, and for all of the dedication and heart and soul that you've put into this effort. It's very clear that none of this could have been done by any one group or one institution, but I think what we've just done is we've set a new standard for how open science collaborations can happen. And I think people are going to be looking at what just happened this weekend as a milestone moment of how science should work in the future. You know, when challenging times happen like a pandemic, and we're all faced into this situation like having to force ourselves into self-isolation and working in challenging circumstances, you know, some of us find ourselves that we can't overcome adversity, and some of us rise up to it. The idea that we couldn't get together to have a little bit of fun in Oxford, so instead we just brought the world together and demonstrated what's possible if we collaborate together, I think is going to be one of these milestone moments that we're going to look back to and realize how the science of observational data science and informatics changed and how we were all part of something special. So I want to congratulate and thank everybody who participated in this effort for all of your hard work. I want to thank our literature review team. You know, we say that this is an 88-hour marathon that we just went through, but as you heard from Jenny, there was a team been working on this for a couple weeks, and to review 10,000 publications, if that was done in a year, we would have been patting ourselves on the back. And the fact that it was done in a week is a testament to the fact that this dedicated group came together and collaborated to bring us the evidence of what's known today, so we could know what evidence gaps exist that we needed to fill in the future. So thank you all very much for your contributions. I want to thank the Phenotype Development and Evaluation Group. We had a tremendous time working on trying to think that we could come up with a good definition, only to have the data tell us that we needed to continue to go back to the drawing board and innovate. But the amount of creativity and passion and hard work that I saw from Belarus to Asia to New York City and beyond was truly inspiring. And the fact that we had analyses literally running 24/7 so that we could use the data to give us the insights for what was the right way to define diseases that are the fundamental outcomes of our studies. It was very impressive to see how much passion we had to make sure that the inputs going into our characterization, estimation, and prediction studies were the absolute highest quality that can be. I've been doing observational research for over a decade, and I can tell you that each time we have some insights in Odyssey, I feel like it makes me shake my head at all the things I didn't know back in the day. And I can tell you what I learned this weekend from phenotyping, as Anna nicely put it, was that we need to have an empirically based driven process to create phenotypes. Anybody who designs a study by guessing at a code set or thinking that they understand how data may manifest because of their past clinical experience is really just throwing a dart at a wall. But what we've developed and what we've demonstrated this week is that we can actually do better. We can impose a scientific rigor to phenotyping that can actually improve the efficiency and quality of our research. So I want to thank each and every member of the phenotype group who really helped to lead this innovation and bring it to the table. I want to give a good shout out to our network execution team and friends and family there. Kristen and Talita did an amazing job shepherding us through taking all of these study packages that were rapidly being developed and contributing them, sending those out to the network and supporting the data partners in executing those studies and sharing back results. You know, when we were talking about running a study, it's not just one person in isolation. You've got a developer building a package who has to share that package to a data partner who has to figure out how to execute code that was never written for their environment, run the code, figure out what the heck these results are, and trust this community-based approach to share the results back for the public good. And that's not something that happens easily. It usually doesn't happen in months, sometimes takes years. But what the team actually demonstrated is what's possible if you build a collaborative trust and work together to build best practices that can be followed by everybody. And what you saw from all of these results is a testament to the fact that we had this network together delivering on sharing data or using data, sharing results, and collaborating together to make a process as seamless as possible. And as Kristen showed, it is not that it's super easy, it's tremendous hard work. And so I want to thank Kristen, Talita, and everybody in the network execution group for what they did to develop packages, deliver them, and bring back results so that we can share it with the world. I want to thank the characterization team. You saw some really exciting results there, both from Ed and from Chan, about understanding for the first time ever, what does a population with COVID-19 actually look like around the world? And that simple question, who are these people? What are their medical history? What medicines have they been taking? These are critical questions we have not had the answer to until today, when because of our network, for the first time ever, we've produced a systematic analysis of COVID-19 patients around the world, and we're now going to be able to compile that results and share it with policymakers, healthcare professionals, and all other interested parties who need this information to understand exactly how do we fight off this terrible disease. So I want to thank everybody in the characterization group for thinking rigorously about a characterization study and for delivering a high quality study that not only has delivered results today, but figures to be the absolute foundation for how we characterize these populations in the weeks and months to come as we continue to try to learn about this disease. I've got to thank the prediction group. You just saw something just truly amazing today. The presentations by Peter, by Jenna, by Ross, by Nick. What you just saw was that we took the idea of how to flatten the curve and we turned that into solutions. Solutions that are now publicly available on the Odyssey website, where we've developed models, evaluated those models to understand they show promise in the data set for which they're learned, but externally validated on other databases around the world. You know, there's many publications talking about the hype and excitement about machine learning. And now there's a lot of papers as we come down the hype cycle where people are wondering if machine learning is just going to be no substance. But I think what this team demonstrated is what machine learning can actually be to really impact public health. And this is about responsible use of algorithms on observational data, effective use of the notion of external validation across the network to make sure that we have confidence in the models before we deploy them. And so I want to thank from the bottom of my heart this prediction team who actually did something I think is what every healthcare professional in the world needs right now. And I think we're on the precipice of being able to deliver that because of the great work of this team. And I've got to thank the estimation team. What you just saw was really unprecedented. You know, had we gotten together as a group and we had done one cohort analysis of one comparison of one target drug versus one cohort in one database, and we had done that over a month, I think we probably would have patted ourselves on the back for a job well done. But what you just saw was Danny provided a comprehensive safety profile of hydroxychloroquine, the largest study to date on a drug that likely is going to be used by hundreds of thousands of patients around the world. And the fact that it looks like preliminarily that we've got some reassurance about the safety of that medicine is a tremendous contribution to public health. You saw from Albert that we're going to investigate the protease inhibitors because these are drugs actively investigated in clinical trials for COVID-19 right now, and we don't know about the safety and effectiveness of these products, but real-world evidence is going to likely be the necessary piece of information we need to complement our understanding as these clinical trials roll out. And you saw from Daniel that ACE inhibitors, this question that healthcare providers have at the top of their mind every single day, while we don't have the data right now to produce a definitive conclusion, we now have an extremely strong study design that is now ready, packaged up, and waiting for data to become available so that the moment that COVID-19 data is available across the Odyssey community, we can deliver high quality evidence to inform this extremely important public health question. So I want to thank the estimation group for all of their major contributions in the design, implementation, and execution of all of our estimation studies. I've also got to give a big shout out to our infrastructure team. So it doesn't just happen that 350 people show up on a website and everything works great. It's actually the hard work and dedication of a lot of folks, from the technical infrastructure to create a platform for collaboration, to the fact that we had to stand up servers around the Odyssey system to provide places for researchers to collaborate together. This was done by a range of researchers, helping everything from making sure that people could log on to making sure that people had access to an infrastructure to collaborate, as well as Craig Saxon leading our communications so that those knew what was going on and could share these messages with other researchers who surely need to hear what we're doing, because what we're doing is generating reliable evidence to inform medical practice, but we need this evidence in the hands of those who need it. And so I want to thank our infrastructure team for everything they did to pull off this amazing weekend. So I'm the bearer of bad news. While the Study-A-Thon may be finishing today, this is only the start of our journey. With tremendous thanks to Erasmus MC, the Microsoft Teams collaboration platform that we created to hold this Study-A-Thon is going to continue to be available to support our ongoing Odyssey collaborations. So the studies that you saw that are still underway, we're going to continue to use this venue as a way to collaborate together. I'll have to say, a lesson for me, I had never actually used Microsoft Teams much until this weekend, and I was quite concerned about how a collaboration platform would pull off having 350 people from 30 different countries actually trying to all work together. And I was amazed by both the technology working for us, but also how as collaborators, we figured it out to work together and figured out how to collaborate as one team, albeit virtually and albeit in every time zone around the world. The fact that we made this work, I think, is a testament to what open science collaborations can really be. Thanks to the generous support from AWS, as well as the great help from Lee Evans, we've stood up a virtual environment for building and designing observational designs. Atlas-covid19.odyssey.org has been our instance of Atlas that we've been using as a collaborative sandbox to develop analyses, and that'll continue to be available while we persist through this work. And as you heard, there's a lot of studies that are going on, tremendous preliminary work, but really we're really at the start of the journey of dissemination. And each and every one of those teams that's been participating is going to be charting out their own strategy for dissemination. But as focused for our Odyssey community, our goal is to get evidence in the hands of those that need it. And so we're going to encourage everybody, as you generate insights and develop reliable evidence, that you share that information as publicly and as broadly as possible. We're using data.odyssey.org as a venue for us to share results and make them publicly available as soon as possible. And so you saw from Jenna and Ross and Anik how we already have patient-level prediction models up there loaded. And you saw from Danny that estimation results. We've used this platform to evaluate the study diagnostics and then to unblind ourselves once protocols were finalized and diagnostics were passed. And so we'll continue our mandate of trying to get this evidence out there by sharing it as quickly as possible. But putting data on a website doesn't necessarily complete this journey of evidence dissemination. We certainly recognize the need and importance to publish our work. And so the teams are already actively underway in drafting manuscripts, which will go through the peer review publication process. And we're going to encourage all of that effort to be sharing that results in open access so that this information can get in the hands of decision makers as quickly as possible. Now, in 88 hours, we did a heck of a lot of work. We answered an awful lot of questions. We answered questions that were prioritized to us by our stakeholders across various governments and public health institutions. But what we also heard from the community was that there's a lot more important questions that need answering. And we actually received a lot of questions on the Odyssey forums, as well as in the Teams environment, where researchers have brought to bear other important questions that we think could be very meaningful. I've just posted a summary of these. My ask to all of you, members of the Odyssey community, is two things. First, keep asking good questions. And when you're going to ask a question, don't keep it to yourself. Don't think that you're going to answer this amazing research question and scoop everybody else. Post your thoughts on the Odyssey forums. And for when you post your thoughts, realizing that you're contributing your ideas to a community who actually can act on those ideas and deliver results. And for everybody in this community, I don't want you just to be coming up with good questions. I want you to continue to collaborate with each other to help, because we need to take those questions and translate them into analysis designs. We need people to take those analysis designs and implement them into study packages. We need people to take those study packages and execute them across our international network to generate results. And we need those results shared with the community so that we can interpret them and synthesize the evidence to produce and deliver real-world evidence to decision makers around the world. So with that, I have to offer my sincere thank you to all of you for your engagement and participation in this effort. It is truly the biggest honor I've had in my professional career to work alongside all of you over the last 4 days. I recognize that we've made great progress, and I also recognize that what felt like a Herculean effort is really just the start of a long journey that we're in ahead. But I think what we've demonstrated this weekend of what's possible as we collaborate together, and I hope we use that motivation to keep us focused on tackling the public health questions that are pressing around the world and using our collective talents to deliver high quality evidence that can help stem this tide of this pandemic. With that, we'd like to open it up for questions and answers. For those of the over 150 individuals who are still following us now 2 hours into this presentation, I encourage you to post questions in the open Q&A that you should see in the top right-hand corner of the screen. If you just click there and type your question, Danny and I will now take the opportunity to moderate questions that come in. Danny, we've got a question already. Maybe I'll throw it your way. The question comes from Vince. Is there a way to compare whether admitting early or later impacts outcomes for those same patient groups who represented to care?
That's an interesting question. I guess there is a way, and it is to run a study in the Odyssey community. I encourage you, Vince, to write a note in one of the forums and let's discuss that.
So Wojciech asked the question, is there any effort to coordinate prospective COVID-19 OMOP-based research? So I hope that, as you've all seen, we are making tremendous progress on creating the infrastructure necessary to do research on COVID-19. This notion of what's retrospective research and what's prospective research, I think, is an interesting dichotomy, because what we really have been, our strength within the Odyssey community has been to take existing observational data that's captured during the routine course of clinical care, whether it be electronic health records or clinical registers or insurance claims data, to take that data and figure out how can we generate reliable evidence through the retrospective analysis of those data. But waiting 1 month from now would mean that there's prospectively a month that's passed, but we're still performing our retrospective analysis on those data. And so what I'm actually excited about what we did this week isn't just that we have those results, preliminary results that you got to see today, but actually it's that we've created these analysis packages that actually serve as the prospective solution to the Odyssey community's COVID-19 response. As you saw from Daniel, for example, we have an analysis package ready to answer this question of ACE inhibitors. And as data accumulates across the Odyssey network, we're going to be excited to be able to run that package and generate results effectively as soon as the data becomes available. So I would say that our prospective strategy for coordinating research for anybody who has data in the OMOP Common Data Model is to make sure that we have our standard analytics in place, make sure that those that have data have everything in their support they need to convert their data into the OMOP Common Data Model and to refresh their ETLs on as timely basis as possible. And for those organizations who have data who are wondering, is it worth the effort to convert to the OMOP Common Data Model? Well, I hope what you just saw this couple hours is the kind of research that can happen powered by this open community data standard. And I really hope that that will be motivation enough to enlist even more members of the international community to join our journey with us. There's another question that just came up about, can we speak about the ability to detect intensive care in a timely manner? So I'll comment on one thing that we actually did in our phenotype group. We actually spent a lot of time, led by Gautam Rao and Christian Reich. We spent a lot of time trying to figure out exactly what does it mean to have intensive care. What we recognized is across the international community, it seems pretty viable that we can observe mechanical ventilation, that we can capture procedures for tracheostomy and ECMO. However, the notion of ICU care is something that's quite disparate around the world. So we had a real challenge in actually figuring out the appropriate phenotyping for intensive services within a hospitalization. I think we made a nice, we made a sound decision to focus on those specific observed activities that happen in intensive services with ventilation and such. And I think that that's a reasonable definition. As it relates to the timeliness of data, I think that's going to vary across our data network. And what I'm really happy to see that Kristen and Talita and George initiated was reaching out to data partners to really try to better understand data recency, to understand when could we expect more up-to-date data to become available, so that we can have a realistic expectation that we can communicate to all stakeholders about when new data may become available. And what we heard from some of our colleagues in various government agencies is that most of the questions that are necessary are going to require both outpatient services and inpatient care to really tackle the longitudinality that exists. And I think there's no community in the world better equipped to answer those longitudinal retrospective analysis questions than us here in the Odyssey community. And so I encourage all of you who have access to data to join this effort with us. Danny, there was a question that maybe I'll throw to you. What tools for literature mining can facilitate phenotyping, characterization, respectively? What are the unmet user needs for the members of the phenotyping community and the characterization team that could benefit from new tools for scalable extraction of the COVID literature?
Wow. So we have been using a number of tools that have proved quite useful this week. Of course, the classic EndNote and the likes, but we have also been using this software called Ryan, which is open access, and it's proved very useful to do screening of the literature, especially in a situation like the current one where we have to work virtually and not meet each other. So I think that's one that we should definitely look into.
Great. There was a question, could we partner with MD-Calc as an avenue for disseminating the prediction models? I don't know, Peter or Jenna, do you want to comment on your thoughts about prediction model dissemination and where you'd like to see us go, both in the short term and the long term?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. Yeah, so I think it's a very important point that we need to find better ways to disseminate these models, and I think we are already building tools in that direction with the Shiny applications and being able to download models. I think we can still do a better job in building a library of all the models that we've been building over time, and have others add their models to our libraries. Especially since we're able to run these models against the own CDM, and that network is growing strongly. I hope that there will be much more models to come in the upcoming years that we can host in one central place within Odyssey. So it's a very good point, and I'm looking forward to build that together with some people. And if you're interested in that, please join and help us think that process through further.
Danny, we got a question about follow-up to this. So I guess some people just didn't get enough over the last 88 hours. Question was, what kind of follow-up should we expect? Are we going to have some weekly meetings? How do we continue to continue to move this work forward?
Yeah, I haven't had enough myself, so I can assure you that we will continue and bring the current projects to fruition and to completion. And there's a long list of very interesting projects that are already posted in the new studies channel that we set up. So I think there's definitely a need for the Study-A-Thon leads to sit down and discuss how we're going to be moving forward, because there's a lot of stuff that we can do that will have an impact on patient care.
Great. And a question from Giannis, and I think it's like 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. there. I don't know. It's been a late night for him, but he's still asking us that they're working on several protocols that can have a direct benefit from the Study-A-Thon experience, results, and the prospects. Is there any way that they can cite the work of this Study-A-Thon so that everybody on the planet can use the same references and further strengthen our common work? Danny, I don't think we've had any conversations about this, but do you have any initial thoughts about how we might be able to have this experience be something that people can reference and point people to in the future?
Yeah, so we have discussed, at least in a couple of groups, the possibility of producing some preprints in bioRxiv, so that the stuff that we are producing is citable and can be referenced even before we go through the usually tedious process of peer review and different rounds of reviews and comments before we reach a publication in a scientific journal. So we are going to be looking seriously into that.
We received another question about that I'll take, a question about the OMOP common data model. Were there any sort of weaknesses or limitations that we discovered? Well, I'll say one observation that I had that I thought was really fascinating was the level of complexity that was required to model certain types of diseases that are not so straightforward. A case in point, let's take COVID-19. There are some patients who may have captured a diagnosis for COVID-19. There are some patients who may have a recorded measurement where the measurement is pre-coordinated to say measurement positive. There are other people who may have a test performed that delivers a value. That value can be a range of observations such as positive, detected, and present. Those records can either be in the condition domain or the observation domain or the measurement domain. And so what we ended up doing, and it was a tremendous work by our vocabulary team and the phenotype development team, was figure out all the different permutations and ranges of ways that people are trying to capture data on this disease around our international community. Now, in an ideal world, if we were truly fully standardized, there would be one clinical concept of COVID-19. Everybody would be using it the exact same way, and there would be no ambiguity to what that means. I think the reality of it is we're dealing with a tremendously tricky problem. The fact that we standardized enough so that we could run one cohort definition across 37 data partners and produce results at all, I think is something that we need to congratulate ourselves for and be proud of the infrastructure that we've created. But I don't think we should rest on our laurels. There's still continued work to be done to further standardize the conventions that we follow, the vocabularies that we use, and the way in which we think about expressing clinical ideas. But I think what we learned from this week above all else is that if we have a community effort, open community data standards, open source analytic tools, then we can deliver high quality evidence to answer real questions that matter to the world. And we can do it together as efficiently as anybody has ever seen. And so I'm actually quite, while there's more to be done and we can always be improving, I'd say that the OMOP Common Data Model and the Odyssey tool stack demonstrated 1,000 times over that we're ready for business when it comes to generating reliable evidence. All right, seeing no more questions, Danny, I'm going to let you close us out.
Thank you, Patrick. So I'm not going to lie to you. I know there are curves ahead. There are challenging times that we're going to be going through. I just want to thank you again, everyone that has been working with us, and it's been amazing to see people rallying together to put this amazing, really hard work. And I'm just looking forward to collaborating with you more and to keeping in touch. Please stay safe, stay at home, and let's flatten this curve and get this sorted. I'm sure that we'll see each other at the end of the curve. Have the journey with us, join the journey.